Hi, everyone. Welcome to a special sci-fi conversation. This is on the Legend Fiction Show, and this is a recording with Scott Gates. Welcome, Scott. Good to have you with us.
Thanks, Dominic. Hey, everybody.
So this is for our Worlds Without End second annual convention, which everyone is welcome to join us for free, unless you catch this, afterwards. You're getting the replay. Then I'm sorry you missed us. We had so much fun. But we're talking about science fiction today, primarily because, two reasons. One, Scott, you're a historical author, and now you're branching out and you're writing science fiction. So that's one. I had to ask you why. And then two, we have the congressional hearings that are happening right now, and military experts are leaving many asking, what exactly is going on out there? And we're like, aliens are real. And then we're just, okay, swipe. I want to see the next reel. And we don't know if we care or not. And I don't know about you. Well, actually, I do know because you told me. We've both grown up watching War of the Worlds, Independence Day, Signs, Star Wars. There's like a plethora of movies, and we all love science fiction. So let's just take a moment. First of all, why are you writing sci-fi? And then let's talk about the different kinds of sci-fi that are out there, and as far as aliens are concerned. And then lastly, let's talk about why it matters, why aliens are actually kind of an important thing in terms of fiction. So first, why are you writing science fiction, and what's going on?
Great. Good question. I have two historical fiction novels out. And so the first one came out 2020, second one 2022. And I was talking to my publisher. They were, we're starting to think about a third book. And I had another historical fiction topic in mind. And then I had this science fiction thing that I thought might be a short story, or I was even going to try graphic novel format, not illustrating it, but writing it and finding an illustrator. But I talked to him about it, and I said, I'm kind of stuck on this historical fiction novel. Would you be open to something a little different? And they said, sure, go for it. And which I appreciate now, not to say that it's a guarantee they're going to publish the thing, but they seem pretty interested so far. I'm bringing them along. So I'm currently working on it, but it does deal with aliens. And there's a good, when I started writing science fiction, I realized it is tied up in a lot of historical fiction. It's kind of an alternate timeline that I'm writing. So I spent a lot of time in Alabama in the early to mid 1900s. And then I'll end up, the timeline will take you on through the 90s. So, there's historical fiction in there too. But I wanted to do something different. And like you said, science fiction has been such a big part of my, experience as a reader and developing as an author. So I think I'm realizing that as I'm writing it, there's a lot of ways to do some homage, pay some respect to those books and movies that and songs that I had, kind of grown to love over the years.
Yeah, the key reason why, I wanted to pull you in, let's have a brief talk about, aliens, partly just because it's fun, but the idea of the whole thing is fascinating, but also because what I'm seeing in a lot of Christian communities is a fear of this idea. And it's an instant kind of class them right up there with vampires and werewolves and everything sort of that ilk, and it's all from hell or something like that. And I thought, wait, no, you obviously haven't read enough novels. You have no idea about the variety of different kinds of, shall we say, aliens that are out there. So let's take a second and actually talk about that. You've got some categories we can look at.
Yeah, just thinking through it. And I do want to circle back to what you're saying there, because that's totally reasonable, that train of thought. I don't want to discount it. And I've talked to, so I'm, as a Catholic author, I've mentioned this to other Catholics and Catholic authors, and some have brought up this idea that you're talking about. I discussed it with our parish priest. So that was a great conversation, but we'll come back to that. So as far as reflecting on some of the science fiction that I've enjoyed, I started putting it in different buckets, because a lot of science fiction, it's no mystery that a lot of times aliens, sometimes they're just aliens because it's fun, right? But more often than not, there's more to it than that. It's like a reflection of the human condition or some flaw or something that we can unpack and kind of learn a little bit more about how we work through this metaphor that's the alien. But as far as, if you look at pop culture and popular science fiction, I was looking at alien purpose. That's one thing that I'm dealing with in my book. Why are they here, right? And that shifts throughout the course of the book, our understanding of that. And if you think about it, if we were ever visited by something that seemed to be an alien, I think that would be our first question, right? Why are you here? Because for one, conquest is a popular theme, right? That's War of the Worlds, Independence Day, signs. There's a lot of that. Another would be on the other side, benevolence, peace. They want to come here to help us in some way. Cocoon, Close Encounters, for whatever reason, a lot of sci-fi in the 80s. But you run across that. There's those in between the two, and Childhood's End, the novel by Arthur C. Clarke, sticks out in my mind as that. It's very heavy, and the themes are various, but it's the overlords are not here for conquest. They're not necessarily here for our benefit as humanity.
We would define it. So
it's kind of this colonialism theme. Another theme is in need of help, and District 9 comes to mind. Their ship breaks down over South Africa. Arrival with Amy Adams is a more recent one that's really interesting. I believe they come here to
because we're in need of help, right? I actually don't know what their motivation is now that I think about it.
They had wanted us to learn their language to help them in the future, I believe.
Okay, I forgot about that.
Maybe I misinterpreted, but another one which creeps me out is experimentation. Communion. Well, this is a theme like purpose. So that would be like the abduction stuff, like communion, fire in the sky. Communion's something else. Flight of the Navigator, actually, if you remember that one.
I've not seen that.
Like a Disney movie, I think, from the 80s, and it's really cool. But they were here to experiment with us, more or less. I don't remember that part of it, but another purpose, just passing through. I think E.T. would fall into that category. They didn't really want to be here. So those are just some of the.
Or what is it? Hitchhiker's Guide. That's kind of loosely passing through because we're an obstacle.
Right, exactly. Get the dolphins off the earth, and then
thanks for all the fish.
Yeah. So, it was kind of fun to go through and think about all the different categories out there. But as I think that's for the most part captures a lot of what's out there. So,
So on the one hand, in terms of storytelling, there are aliens they're a theme or they're a tool that can stand for a ton of different things. And that's kind of the point of what stories do would be to get us to face something, to pay attention to something. And it might be something we're not paying attention to in our environment or at our time. And an author is, and they're trying to sort of capture your attention for a minute. Pay attention to this, and maybe it'll change you the way it's changed me. So it could be serious, it could be fun, but that's kind of the function, I think, very, very loosely of a story. And when you introduce an alien into it, the very name itself is an indication of the role that it serves, which is to get you to pay attention to something that you have absolutely not prepared for, and you have no idea, what its motivations are. So, like we talked about earlier, I want to ask you now, come back to the whole parish priest story you mentioned, where we were to imagine, okay, they're actually apparently real. So what? Are we concerned? How does this affect our faith? Does it nullify our faith for some reason? Are they, can we be all safely convinced that they're all purely demonic? Or are they brothers in creation? So first of all, how did that conversation go with your priest, and where are you sitting on it?
So I really wanted to talk about it because I'm trying to be intentional about bringing more aspects of my faith into my writing. And so, especially with this novel, I feel like I have an opportunity to do that, given the topic. The main family, the protagonist and his family, are Catholic. They're a Catholic family. And so I'm kind of coming at it from that angle. They talk about their priest and how their priest is reflected on what's going on in their world. So all this did start, like I'd said, I spoke to some other Catholics and Catholic authors, and I had not thought of this or realized that this was a belief out there, but there was caution that should all this talk of aliens, right, that we're hearing in our world now, there's caution because, the idea is if something were to come from another world and appear and offer us new technology or something, cool and amazing to change our lives, that be careful, because that might be a temptation and they could be demonic. Now, that seemed a little out there at first, but I can't discount that. I mean, that's a very plausible, idea. And that's not actually, it was new to me because you don't see that often in science fiction. I will note glaringly, Childhood's End, the aliens look straight up like demons. I mean, red skin, horns, forked tails, wings, the whole thing. That is explained in the book as kind of a collective premonition of humanity. So we, they changed our course of history so much that in our collective consciousness, we knew this thing that looked like a demon was bad. But so they're not actually demons the way we would think of them. But anyway, I wanted to bring it up with our priest because that was interesting to me. And that's, if that's your belief and that's where you want to go, that's fine. I mean, and be cautious. If an alien visits us, I think we should all be cautious about their true intentions and motivations anyway, right? Yeah. But our priest did, obviously, I knew he would want to get into it. He'd done some good homilies on AI and social media, and he was really plugged into kind of social issues. So of course, when I started talking to him about it, he was aware of, the news several months back. Las Vegas, there was an alleged alien sighting, and I think that turned out to be a bogus. But so as I mentioned the demon thing to him, and he said, well, from his perspective, he felt like that would be putting things in too neat a box, and that we don't need to write them off like that, that they would fit perfectly within our faith. And I like that train of thought, because that is speaks to science as a whole. Whatever the next revelation might be, it's in our catechism. So if I know we don't have all the time in the world, but it's faith and science is mentioned, and it's pretty much since the same God who reveals mysteries and infuses faith has bestowed the light of reason on the human mind, God cannot deny himself, nor can truth ever contradict truth. So essentially, as my priest had said, there's science and there's our theology. And so science is within that. And as he had said, as we pierce the next veil of understanding of our natural world, we will only inevitably find more veils, right? So if we come to learn that there are aliens within our natural world, it shouldn't change our theology whatsoever, because our theology is bigger than that, right? And it can all fall within God's plan of creation. So I liked that perspective. And then one last thing about that conversation, I said, so what would your homily be if they showed up on
the communion line? Yeah.
What are you going to talk about that Sunday as far as how we should be approaching these things? And he boiled it down to show love, do all things through love. So regardless of their purpose and intent, that's a great starting place, right? If to act out of love is to act out of love and prayer, would be to act out of fear, which never works out. So I just thought, I mean, it was a 20-minute chat, and I thought there was some great stuff in there. So
agreed
for thought.
Again, coming back to it, as it's partly a theme in stories, but it's also something that we've been paying attention to for a long time. And I think it's a topic that has its fingers in multiple cookie jars, not because it's like an octopus thing, but because it applies to multiple different things that are real in our world, like demons and angels, hoaxes, our own, projections about what we're afraid of or things that are out there. So if they are real, it is a complex topic, and to write everything off, I think, as being, oh, they're all here and they're all evil. It's like, well, if you look at a lot of the different sightings or the different experiences of this sort of thing, which is something that's fascinated me for 10, 20 years, you get a variety of different types of interactions. Some are harmful, some are weird, some are innocent, some are observational. And I like your point about our theology is big enough. It's
Yeah.
it's not just intentionally big enough. It's committed to being big enough to welcome every person anywhere. And if an alien shows up and they're a person, a being with intellect and free will, therefore they're on the same sacred pilgrimage as we are. Now they may show up with blasters and they may try to vacuum us up to kill us, but that doesn't negate the fact that, well, that's a conquest situation. God loved them, and He will sort of judge them for their misdeeds and whatever, in the same way that He judges us. But they're persons right alongside with us at the general judgment, and we're basically dealing with people with another face.
Yeah.
At
And
some
I
point,
did.
we receive communion with them.
And well, there you go. I mean, that's what I had got to also with that discussion with our priest. I was like, okay, so through love, we could act. This could be a conversion opportunity, right? uh, but so don't write that off. And I don't want to miss. There's other good parts of this portion of the catechism. Just to what you were saying, things of the world and things of faith derived from the same God. I think that kind of sums it up. And some might take that literally and say of the world, but I mean, I think we can all admit that creation is bigger than our earth, and that we have a full scientific understanding of the universe. And
Are you familiar with the metaphor of the island of knowledge?
What now?
Are you familiar with the metaphor of the island of knowledge?
It's not unfamiliar, but
it's the sense that as we live on an island, and as we keep discovering more and more of the island, like we're floating in a sea of everything that we don't know. And then as the island gets bigger, and as we know more, what also happens is the circumference or the size of the island also increases. So our contact with everything that we don't know keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So at no point do we ever say, yeah, we figured it out, either with theology or with our science. We know everything now. We're good. Everything else is basically footnotes from here on out, which has been kind of the attitude for both for almost the last 100 years. And now all of a sudden we're learning stuff like quantum and things way beyond the scope of this conversation that are helping us to realize we're still beginning to figure out not just what's there, but then how to put it all together and then how to live it out, And the idea of the alien as a concept is something that always exists kind of out there in the darkness, and it's the thing that we don't know what to do with. So on the one hand, I want to caution us against projecting, because we always do that whenever we walk down the street and meet somebody we don't know. They're an alien to us. And in stories, we dramatize that. You put some fun categories together. But for those who are writing, what would be a point of encouragement that you'd like to leave with writers who want to get into writing, say, science fiction, and they want to include aliens and they're kind of not sure? Any words of encouragement based on what you're thinking?
Well, it has been overwhelming for me, but I think just because it seemed like it's such a big topic, right? I'm usually writing about communities and families, but then I decided to frame it in that perspective. So like I said, there's a main family that I'm following along, and it's this huge moment in history viewed through their lens. So there's one point. If you feel like you want to get into science fiction, but it's too big, just bring it down as far as the perspective you're taking. And whether, that could even be the alien perspective, if you want to go that route, but stick to individuals, because when you're writing a story, it's all about the people, the characters. That's what makes it really interesting. So, try it out. It's an interesting genre, and it's, I haven't written fantasy or science fiction before, so it's fun because you can just kind of go nuts. I mean, I personally want to ground it in some real physics and things like that, but then again, you're free to imagine whatever technology you want. So that's pretty interesting.
I love the line from Hamlet where he's like, the world is, what is it? The world is bigger than, darn it. Okay. If you're a Shakespeare buff, dear listeners or watchers, drop it in the comments. But that line where he's like, the world is bigger than what's in your books, or something like that. I think the last thought that I'd leave to encourage people too would be, know the role that if you're including aliens in your story, and if they have some sort of dramatic role and they're not just best friends to the main hero or something, understand why you're using them. Understand the role, why they're there. And then if you get serious about that role, then you can sort of backtrack. Well, what would be the response to that? How do we work with that? How does a story then build around that? And I think that would be the way. Oops, we lost you. Let me know if you can refresh and rejoin. Hey, I lost you. You back?
Yep.
Okay. Not exactly sure where I lost you, but let me just try to recap.
You were
a second.
saying helpful for those writing it.
Mhm.
Think about the purpose of the alien. Why are they there?
Yeah.
In the story.
So let me just try to. Do you
Yeah.
want to recap that thought actually? Because it kind of sounds cool coming from you too.
Sure. One other tip for readers or writers tackling science fiction: if you do use an alien, if you introduce an alien character, think about its purpose. Why is it in your story? Why does it need to be in your story? What more can we learn from this encounter, right? What bigger
Mhm.
lessons are out there? And also, don't forget the faith angle.
Mhm.
As far as it's an opportunity to reflect on the human condition and reflect on our own faith and where all this might stand within that. So,
And I think that's the fantastic point to kind of wrap. A lot of times we're like, I don't know how to sort of insert the catechism into my War of the World story where people are being stamped out and stuff. And it's like, well, okay, calm down. Maybe you don't have to put in John, verses from sacred scripture. Maybe the point of your story is to take characters who thought they were awesome, diehard, authentic Catholics, and then you throw them in this situation and they realize, oh, I don't know everything about creation and I'm not equipped for this. And then the point of the story is, who are you when what you think you know does not match up to reality? And then what does your faith start to look like? Which is technically the sacred pilgrimage that every single one of us are on, because we all think, I'm good with what I know, or I like it, or I'm comfortable with it. And then stuff happens in our lives, aliens, anything that we're not prepared for in any
right.
capacity,
Yeah.
appear to challenge us to help us realize maybe you're good, but you're on the first two rungs of a ladder that goes up a very long way. And our job is to learn how to integrate what is true, what is not, and then to grow. That's kind of the whole point of being alive. And that's why
Yeah.
we do that with stories, like zip file this experience into like 2 hours. Well, if it's a book, it might be 4 hours of really dramatic, danger and fun and stuff to get you to pay attention to something that you wouldn't have thought of before. So, Scott, your novel is something you're still working on, considering releasing it maybe next year?
So I talked to my publisher. I'm really aiming, I think we're talking hopefully 2024.
Very cool.
But publishing's a long timeline, so I'm patient. But within the next couple of years, so stay
Sweet.
tuned. But
So if people want to follow your mailing list, where can they go to get in touch with you, follow you, learn more about stuff you're writing?
yeah, so you can check out what I'm doing other than science fiction at scottmgates.com, and also on social media, Facebook or Instagram at Scott M. Gates.
Very cool. And I think you're also considering you're being at the con as well on October 14th, 2023,
Yes.
right? And
Yep.
you're hosting is it a workshop?
I hope to, yeah. So we'll make that happen.
Make a short plug for that.
Sure. I do. I've done this workshop before, both in person and virtually, and it's I want to have time for writing and sharing. So it is, to actually make it a hands-on workshop.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll just give you some writing prompts about character development and putting that character in a scene. Hopefully you can take away whether it's a seed of a story or a character you can use somewhere else, or just a little something fun to write. But
Fantastic.
that's the hope.
Good deal. Well, there you go, friends. Check the links in the description. Subscribe to Scott so that you know when his sci-fi novel is coming out. And then 2, hit the link to subscribe, to register for the LegendHaven convention, which is free for readers and writers, primarily Catholic and Orthodox. But hey, it's all sci-fi and fantasy. And maybe you can register in time to join Scott's workshop and hang out with him. So till next time, everyone, keep writing and say a prayer for an alien.